Hey, great to be here again. Great to have you today for incredible journey. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, co-founder, and president of GSD Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Santa Clara, California. We love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Welcome again. And today it's my pleasure to introduce Suhail Ahmad. So Suhail is an entrepreneur, an investor. I mean, incredible background from Calgary all the way to Scotland. Has done all kinds of deals. A fintech pioneer. Has really started in 1997 at the beginning of this all. He's done a lot of incredible things. And today we're going to talk about private capital and decentralized markets. So it's with great pleasure and honor that I introduce Suhail. Hi, Suhail. How are you today?
Hello, Gary. Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Doing very well.
Yeah, good to see you today. So, okay, now I got a question for you. So,
Yes.
going back to your Calgary days, I was up there in July one time, and there was this thing
Okay.
called a stampede.
Absolutely.
I've never seen anything like it. I have never seen a town converted to the Wild West, but I saw it there.
It is amazing, and we call it the greatest show or the greatest outdoor show on earth, and that's kind of the official title of the Calgary Stampede.
And people were so fun and having such a good time. It was like it was like my imagination of what the modern day Wild West would be like.
It kind of takes you back into time, and it's one of those traditions that every year Calgarians go, and of course we get hundreds of thousands of people coming from all over the world. And actually, one of my part-time jobs, one of my first kind of full-time jobs, was at the Calgary Stampede. I did my 10 days, 12-hour shifts over 10 days, and I was basically kind of the security guard at the rodeo entrance. So I was with the cowboys and the cowgirls that were prepping
at the rodeo.
At the rodeo. And so I got to see it right up front.
Like stories I've heard, that's like, what did you do for a living? I was a security guard at the rodeo, and I went to the circus.
Absolutely, and that was kind of my first, because I had turned 18, right? And and they were looking for, and you had to be 18 because of security, and I'm like, well, let me see, 10 days, and a lot of my friends from uni were doing it, and so it was a great experience, and I'd never been on my feet for 12 hours, 10 days straight. And but it was fun. There was a lot of fun. Met a lot of cool people.
Now I got another thing. I had never heard of Chinook winds before, and I went up to Calgary in the middle of the winter. I had seen a receptacle hanging out of the radiator of the car. I'd never seen that before. Being from Pennsylvania and now California and Florida, I'd never seen it. I didn't realize that people really plugged their cars in at nighttime. So it was another level of cold that I had never.
Oh yes, yeah. It's you literally have plugs. Now you see plugs for electric vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. We actually had electrical plugs just to keep the battery and the engine block from not freezing. So when you drove your car to the park and ride, you actually had to plug it in, because if you didn't and you came back, you wouldn't be able to start your car.
That's what I actually went back in. It was a car rental, national car rental. I went back in. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am. I think there's a problem. My car's not
There's a plug
wheel in the engine."
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, it's incredible. So I got a question for you. How do you go from Calgary, right, and move from Calgary to Scotland? What was that journey like, and what happened? How did you do that, and why did you do it?
Well, yeah, no, that's quite an interesting decision, and it was kind of a life-changing decision, to be honest. And so I'm born and raised in Calgary, and in 2006, I moved to actually Toronto for 3 years, and I was heading up an investment bank there. And then, you know what happened in 2008, 2009 with the credit crisis. Investment banking wasn't really
nothing good.
Nothing good. And in investment banking, capital markets, everything was pretty much down deep in the hole. And I always wanted to, get into, because I'm a kind of an entrepreneur at heart, right? So I'm an innovator thinker, and I'm like, how could this happen? How could so many smart people not see this, right? And then, and I was looking at going back to kind of school, doing my MBA, which I've always wanted to do, but you never get an opportunity when you're working full time. And I said, if I do it, I want to do it full time. Then I started looking at schools, and that kind of gave my wife an opportunity to introduce Edinburgh Business School, because she's actually Scottish. She's from Edinburgh. And then I said,
Now, did you meet her there, or did you meet her in Canada?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story in itself. So I actually met her in Calgary. Family friends. She had been visiting for holidays. And we met, and over holidays, and 2 years later, we were getting married.
Wow, that's great.
So she spent. So she lived with me in Calgary, in Toronto, and one of the things she could never get used to was the winters, and I guess the car plugs, and everything that goes with the harsh winters that we've got in Canada. And I've visited Edinburgh very regularly, being in-laws being there, and she said it never snows. It almost never snows in Scotland, or in Edinburgh at least.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I said, fine, Edinburgh Business School, one of the top schools. I'd get more international exposure, instead of going to York or going to somewhere in the US, I wanted more international exposure. So in 2010, I moved to Scotland with the family, big move. And in 2010, interestingly enough, Gary, Scotland or the UK had one of the largest snowstorms in history. And we were literally.
What happens when you come from Calgary?
And we were literally like snowed in. I wrote my first MBA exam, and I could barely get the car out of the parking lot at the university because we were snowed in. And I was expecting my third born. My wife had called that she was going into labor while I was writing my MBA exam. And I literally, the guys helped me push the car out, out of the parking lot so I could get it back on the road. Got home, took my wife to the hospital, and then later that day, or was it the next day or that day? Okay, I'm getting old. It's about 10 years ago, right? My third born, my son was born. And so that was quite an experience. So 2010 was a huge year. Changed continents.
You had a lot of practice driving in snow when you were in Calgary.
Oh yes. So and this is like a 5 Series, a BMW 5 Series. So you can imagine the fun you can have with that in the snow. Right. And so that was a big move, and a beautiful city. I love the people, Scottish people. A lot of engineering talent. Mm-hmm. Really smart people, down to earth. And in Edinburgh, in the UK, one of the nice things is I'm able to actually talk to people, all over the world. The time zone is kind of perfect. The Brits kind of rigged it, the GMT, so that way, it's like 5 p.m. my time, but I'm able to talk to people out in California. In the mornings, I still have enough time to talk to people in Malaysia or Singapore, and it's a really nice place.
No, it's great, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. And by the way, Calgary is really beautiful for my audience out there that wants to see an incredible place. I mean, Banff is one of the most beautiful places on the planet Earth. Just an incredible place.
Absolutely.
Skiing's just phenomenal. So just a wonderful, wonderful place with a lot of excitement. Just wear your warm clothes.
Yes, absolutely. I prefer to go in July and attend the Stampede while you're there.
Yeah. July's perfect. July, August, just a perfect time. So how do you go? So looking down through your CV, one of the things, there was a company called Know You More.
Yes.
What's Know You More?
Know You More is an amazing company, and I was going to surprise the guys with a bit of a plug-in. So Know You More, and the first time actually I met the guys, again it was called Dot Coach. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was to help people understand themselves. So how we have Know Your Client, mm-hmm. right? Know You More is basically a digital coaching platform, mm-hmm. right? That helps employers, corporates, public sector support their people with digital coaching, right? And this is something the founders Tim and Sharak had this vision 5 years ago. Right. And at that time, digital coaching, it was a bit of a tough sell. It was all personal, leadership development, mental well-being. You had to go sit with a person, and they had people coming out to companies and spending time. These leadership coaches, wellness coaches, right? And so Know You More wanted to disrupt that space. You're probably familiar of kind of Better Up, and some of the other kind of digital coaching
Mhm.
apps. But the unique thing about us is that it is people to people. We are actually connecting, people with real qualified coaches. The whole process is digital,
Mhm.
and it enables people to just become a better version of themselves. And I think it's coaching in general has grown significantly over the
Mhm.
past few years,
Mhm.
and now with the pandemic, with COVID, there's a lot more need within organizations to support their people.
Well,
Right.
I mean, absolutely. It's been a trying time for last year. It's
Exactly.
almost like connect the coach, yeah.
Yes. It is, and it's but at a high quality level, like we deal, our clients include the NHS, National Health Service here in Scotland, the education services, companies like Siemens, Ocado. So it's I think employers are wanting to invest more because now they've kind of got, maybe they are stress from the pandemic. There's economic pressures, and more, and there has been downsizing to a certain degree, across sectors. So there's less people doing pretty much the same, if not more work, right? And that creates a need. So
Well, I mean, the other thing is they're not moving. I don't know about you, but I
yeah,
mean, I sit my butt a lot during the. It's incredible.
agree. Yeah, it's and I had to actually within the office. I've got my main office, and I've like put a standing desk in the corner, and that's kind of the only way I can kind of now start to split my time. And anytime I'm checking emails or any kind of things which are, I'm either walking or standing. So that's kind of a way to kind of get at least get my butt off the chair for a little bit.
Exactly. And it's interesting going down through it. I got a question. What's the so if you could say what are the top three as coaches? I don't know if you know this, but what are the top three today, during this pandemic? What do they talk about? What are the challenges that the folks have as within organizations?
Great question, Gary. And again, we deal with organizations ranging from healthcare to technology. But one of the pressing needs, I think, is mental well-being. Of course, people are just generally more stressed, concerned. There's a higher level of anxiety and stress. The second is leadership development,
Hmm.
where there's more need for people to step up and be able to fulfill new roles. And digital transformation in itself is
Hmm.
kind of accelerating a need for people to adapt and change. And
Hmm.
whenever you have change, that's difficult. And this is where coaching or support comes in. Either, we could support the internal coaches within an organization, build up their internal coaching and mentoring, or be able to provide, access to qualified coaches from external. And then the third, I think, is just that kind of transition part. Business is changing. We are, you've probably seen this. You're on the front lines with what's happening in AI and quantum computing. We're going into whatever you want to call it, industry 4.0. Business is not going to be. There is not. We're not going back to the normal.
Hmm.
What I think, and we are moving into a new era.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, the world's fundamentally changed over the last year. And by the way, so McKinsey said 93% of the companies worldwide were going to go through the digital transformation over the next 10 years. But the situation is companies either had to adapt or die in a very short period of months. So everything from remote workforce management to
Mhm.
Zoom calls to StreamYard, all kinds of ways to connect in a different way. And you're right. It's interesting because as I was a psychologist. I got my graduate degree in psychology, and I remember when we talked about social psychology and human well-being, people want to be around other people. I mean, we're social creatures. We're not used to being isolated. And the one thing that's happened, I don't know about you, but I work a lot more hours than I've ever worked in my life. And because I don't travel, it's not like I have a lot of downtime.
Exactly. Well, Gary, I'm not sure if you see the eye bags, but you're right. We're actually spending more time. I think too much time in front of our screens, and because now there's no excuse. It's not like I can say I'm traveling or I'm heading to a meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm out to lunch.
That's right. Travel used to be my great get out of jail free card, right? I'd be like, guys, I'm traveling for the next week, so I'll take care of it when I come back.
Yeah, exactly. But now when you get back is like right away, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Up tomorrow. No, I agree.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the private capital, decentralized markets. I mean, what's happening there right now? What is happening in private capital and decentralized markets?
Yes. Well, again, the private capital markets are transforming, right? Literally in front of our eyes. And a lot of that is to do with blockchain. And, and if you go beyond the hype, we've seen what's happening in, NFTs and ICOs and all these altcoins and so on. But the real change is coming at the kind of the exchange levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the private capital markets have always been kind of limited to the venture capitalists, the private equity guys, maybe the hedge funds. But now what we're seeing is that, over the past 2 or 3 years, particularly, several projects have come about that are trying to provide access and reduce costs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is one of the things that I've really been passionate about. I've been an investor, kind of a trader, all the way from the .com days. I remember the .com. I don't know if you recall the globe.com and all these, companies that went
right in the middle of it. I was in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. So
I founded a company called Broadian.
yes.
With Broad Vision and Vignette and a lot of the, so because I was in the Valley, I knew a lot of the founders and, went completely through it. And I did an IPO, by the way. I was on the original management team of Click Software. We did an IPO
amazing.
in June of 2000. The bubble burst in March. And we did the calculations. It was either do the IPO, we're probably going to run out of money. So we did the IPO and the rest is history. But you living right through it to see the fundamental changes that took place in this incredibly vibrant community to go like, it was like a ghost town.
It was literally, well, that's what you call a boom and a bust, right? You had this vertical, and you're seeing the same thing now. And the reason I bring up the internet, Gary, is because I see what's happening, what the internet did to telecom and telecommunications. And that kind of began in 1995, right? And it took a while. We're seeing blockchain starting to make the same level of impact in the capital markets. And you have, and I call this shift that we're going to see from crypto to tokenization. Right. And, cryptocurrencies are kind of the buzzword. Everybody's playing them and they're kind of like a .com, right? You buy something in the morning, you sell it by evening and you make money. And people think, it always goes up. Right. 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 And it's going to end badly. It can't, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about the Dogecoin, right? It was happening. And, but, what I see is that with now the advancements in blockchain, just like the internet, in 1995, it was slow, it was clunky. You didn't have the protocol, you didn't have speed that you needed.
Right.
With blockchain, we have a similar problem. It's amazing, but it's not, fast. It can't compete with the payment rails, right? And it's got a lot of these limiting factors. But those limiting factors are slowly falling away, right? And as advancements in blockchain and different protocols come about, a lot of amazing work is happening. We're going to be able to create an alternative system, right? And that's kind of the whole idea with AllDAC, which is something that we launched last year, is to create an alternative capital market. And NASDAQ, NASDAQ kind of revolutionized the capital markets 50 years ago. It was 1971 that NASDAQ was formed, and it was the first digital exchange. And at that time, people said, "Oh, nobody's, going to trade on the NASDAQ. You have to go to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange."
I remember, I remember
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so the idea with AltDAC is to create an alternative digital asset quotation market, right? Create an alternative to the NASDAQ that enables companies to raise capital, list, at a fraction of the cost that it does on NASDAQ. Because NASDAQ, to be honest, is a big boys market now. You can't go on the NASDAQ, right? So a small company with maybe a market cap of 500 to 100, or sorry, 50 million to 100, or maybe up to that mark. It's not feasible for them to do a NASDAQ listing. But with tokenization, what we can do is we can actually not just tokenize equity and debt, but we can also tokenize commercial agreements, such as joint venture agreements. We can tokenize royalty agreements, right? We can tokenize IP.
Now, how does that?
Which is really cool.
How do you tokenize, agreements? How do you tokenize IP? What's behind it? So, what does it look like?
Well, yes. So essentially, IP is an asset, right? It's intellectual property, right? And when we say we're tokenizing it, what we're essentially doing is fractional, similar to what Robinhood does, or some of these apps are doing. They're allowing people to buy fractional shares. So when we say tokenizing IP, what you'd be able to do on AltDAC is buy part ownership in a patent or an intellectual property of a business.
So
in return for an investment.
So I want to paint the picture, because I've been down through it a few times, right? So what happens that you get somebody that wants to buy the company, but you got fractional ownership of the patents? How in the world can you sell the company?
That's a great question, because now what happens is it's very similar to having any other obligation, like a lease obligation. Right? So that obligation needs to either be rolled in, agreed, and carried on by the acquirer, or it can be paid off. And the nice thing about the tokenization and using smart contracts is that those rules, that capital event, can be programmed in the smart contract.
Yeah,
right.
But so the value of the company goes dramatically up, because they're just they're crushing it. They're they're WhatsApp of the world. They're going out. What happens then? How can you define that kind of an event? What do you just set up?
Well, the best way with all of these companies, Gary, is kind of what we call a revenue share or revenue tracker, right? So the value of your token is going to be linked to the revenue, and it's going to derive itself from a portion of the revenues. Right, which means that as startups, as tech startups particularly, we're not about creating profits. We're about market share and reinvestment, right? So with tokenization, either using the IP or equity, we can actually link it to a share of the revenues and create a formula that would be based, and the exit formula would be based on a percentage of revenues or P&L or a combination of. And that's kind of the most exciting part of tokenization, that you can actually customize it really specifically for the need of the business.
Wow,
and still make it attractive enough for investors. And it's a non-equity option. So there's no dilution. There's no talk about valuation. We just need to agree to a percentage of the revenues or the exit price that will be shared with the token holders. And it's long-term patient capital.
So what happens? Again curious.
Yes.
Let's say a company comes out, a Zoom, and it's got incredible technology, but it just hasn't hit the market. It's kind of early, so the value of the IP is X, $100,000. I don't know, whatever it is. So that's door number one. Door number two is, what happens if you don't sell enough of it? You only sell 50,000 of the 100,000. Right? Then what happens is it hits another 3 years. All of a sudden, this becomes the darling of the world, right? There's a pandemic and it takes off. How do you it's if you got a lot of, I know if you got a lot of investors involved, everybody's got an opinion about what something's worth.
Yes.
How do you like placate the people and say, oh, they're irrationally exuberant. This thing is a $50 million company. In reality, it's not. How do you do that? It's interesting for me.
That is the billion or trillion dollar question, Gary, and that's the same struggle a VC has, right?
Mhm.
And as kind of an alt VC,
Mhm.
we have some of those challenges, no doubt, because it's all based on future projections,
Mhm.
and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder,
Mhm.
to a certain degree. So the way that we try to overcome it and still make it attractive for companies is
Mhm.
by helping them match them with the most suitable investors, right? So if, as an example, so one of the things that we're doing is over the past 6 months is just building data, really collecting and building a data set
Mhm.
that allows us, and when we launch, it will allow us to, if you're an AI company, as an example,
Mhm.
looking at raising capital, we can actually shortlist and take your offer and test it before tokenizing it with, let's say, 1,000 verified AI investors. And those could be venture funds, individual accredited investors,
Company in general, or for the patents, Suhail?
or for they've got to believe, because the company is going to issue the patent or has the patent,
Right.
right? So, or the company has the asset that is going to be tokenized. So they've got to buy into the company. Yeah, they've got to love the company, and then they've got to have confidence in the asset appreciating
Mhm.
based on the actions of the company, right?
Got
And
it.
so what we see is that we've got to sell both the company and the asset.
Got it.
Yeah.
No, that's
And,
interesting.
yeah.
So, what do you think? I mean, what's going to happen over the next year? I mean, how's this going to grow? I know
Yeah.
people talking about it, and I hear
Yes.
tokenization. I also hear about, there's so many coins coming out now, and so much in terms of, on one side of it, we are equalizing opportunity around the world, and we're moving away from physical fiat currency, right? We're moving into a totally a different world. On the other side, remember the .com stuff when there were a lot of very interesting. I remember Pets was a Pets.com, the one that had the
Yeah.
dog
Yeah. That's right.
puppet, and but in reality, some of those companies were just a little early. They actually had some good models,
Yeah.
right? Remember Webvan?
Yeah.
Some of them. I mean, it actually, if the Webvan was around during the pandemic, it might have been an entirely different story.
Exactly. Exactly. And see, over the next year, it's almost you know um, difficult to say what's going to happen over the next year. I personally think, I'm an investor in. I haven't bought any Coinbase yet, but I'm an investor in um, uh, digital assets, or a few cryptocurrencies. But I invest primarily in projects, right? Blockchain projects. Over the next year, I think we will see a shakeout. Like you said, a lot, and this is what we're seeing right now in 20, which began in kind of 2020, is similar to 2017.
Mm-hmm.
You're having this FOMO effect. You're having a lot of retail, what I call amateur money, coming into it, right? That are and you see, these 20-year-olds on YouTube, cryptocurrency experts, right, and all this stuff, and that's just a sign. And when your taxi driver starts asking you, what's your favorite coin, then the top's here, and we'll probably see prices collapse by 80-90%.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not in Bitcoin, right? So I think Bitcoin, Ether, because now institutional money has come in, and
Ethereum.
I've,
What do you think about Ethereum?
Ethereum is my favorite, to be honest. I think Ethereum is going to go much higher, right? So I could see Ethereum at 5,000, 5 to 10,000 over the next 2 to 3 years. Bitcoin, I think, is again that kind of the US dollar, but I think over time it's going to lose its significance, particularly as central banks bring in digital currencies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the key for, I think, like even Coinbase, is an interesting case, and I made a note when I on a post that I think Coinbase is the Netscape of cryptocurrency exchanges,
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at Coinbase, it's actually a centralized exchange
Mm-hmm.
dealing in cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
The future is going to be decentralized autonomous organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our vision for all that is to create a decentralized exchange, which means that there is no middleman.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have this intermediary. So the NASDAQ, you can only trade on the NASDAQ through a broker, right? You cannot directly trade on the NASDAQ. You have to go through a broker. You have to pay brokerage fees. There has to be settlement with a custodian and all this stuff. And to list on NASDAQ, God forbid, you're looking at millions of dollars in fees and legal and investment banking and so many middlemen, right? So what the true goal of decentralized finance and the future of private capital markets is the removal of this intermediary. And having the community and having the marketplace be kind of self-regulated, autonomous, right? Where it's a rule-based system, and it doesn't require you to have a broker. It requires, and you'll probably have some professionals that are more expert at participating in it, but you don't have to use them, right? You can actually, anyone can own almost any asset anywhere in the world directly and receive the dividends, the revenue share in the palm of their hand through the digital wallet, right?
No.
And so who was it, Gary, that said, I think it was Thiel, that says software is going to eat the world, right? What I'm saying to people is tokenization is going to eat the capital markets. And there's trillions of value that is going to be unlocked.
Right, so it's already started. And you look
exactly.
I mean, we deal in Africa a lot, and you look at what's happening down in all over Africa. There's specifically Nigeria. I mean, they're quantum. I use quantum leap a lot. I probably shouldn't because I read about quantum. So
yes.
Quantum leap, but move. Anyhow,
leapfrogging, absolutely.
I mean, it's really amazing how that's happened. And so these countries that have not had the infrastructure really moving into another direction ahead of everybody else. It's incredible. And, I wrote an article recently called The Democratization of Opportunities. Nikola Tesla's dream comes true in Forbes. And the reason is because it's really, exactly what you're doing is really equalizing the opportunity. Everybody can participate, and it's not one club. On the other side, you better have some knowledge because, as you said, you don't want your taxi driver or Uber driver saying, hey, listen, what coins are you invested in? And it gets wild. But there are coins, there are environments like Ethereum, like Bitcoin, that are going to move forward and take off. And we are going to move forward in terms of this digital economy. It's already happened. And there's going to be some people that resist it, but eventually it's going to have to happen or you won't be able to participate. It has leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. So, more power to you. And I like the idea where you cut out the middlemen or women because it actually reduces costs and allows you to get things done a lot faster across the board, whether it's real estate transactions, whatever. It just changes. What about AI? So you talk about blockchain, but remember artificial intelligence. What are your opinions about AI and blockchain?
Well, I think AI and blockchain, I'm involved with several kind of companies that are looking at, bringing these two technologies together. I think AI is great. As a non-technical, I think it just, it gets overhyped. And you probably see that in the space too. I come across a lot of companies that try to put AI in it just to kind of prop up the valuation. But when you look at it, you're like, is it really truly, native AI, right? But I think, AI is basically going to do that same thing that blockchain is doing in a way, which is helping automate, streamline, and reduce costs, right? And being data driven. Blockchain, the beautiful thing about blockchain is it's rule-based. It can't be discriminatory, it can't be prejudiced. The smart contract is rule-based. Doesn't matter if it's Gary in the US or Suhail in Scotland, it's going to do the same thing for both of us, right? And I think AI, the key with AI is, of course, having great data sets, right? And so I think AI is already changing business. It's already making significant impact. What would be really cool to see how AI can be incorporated with, blockchains, with virtual reality and some of all this, neat stuff that is kind of, I think, going to change a lot of industries significantly.
I mean, you look at it today, Suhail, there are 40 zettabytes of data on the planet Earth today. So put it in perspective. You took CDs or DVDs and stacked them one on top of another, it would go 29 times between the Earth and the moon. 29. Growing at a little over 67%, between 67 and 68% per year. We are in a state of infobesity. So any way that we can go down through using semi-supervised and unsupervised AI to make our lives a lot better. Now think about it. During this pandemic, you couldn't even get a roll of toilet paper in places in the U.S. because we didn't understand it. We didn't have transparency into the supply chain. Mm-hmm. So here we are developing quantum computers, and we can't get a roll of toilet paper. People,
right? Yes. Yeah, the aliens must be looking at us and saying these guys are pretty strange. Nation.
So we got all that, and then within your own personal cloud, you have about 300,000 items on average. There were only 257,000 websites in 1996. So the average person has more within their own personal cloud, the entire web. The challenge is, how many times every week does somebody say to you, did you get my message? And where did you send it? Can you send me the email again? Because we don't have time. We are inundated. So that number doubles every year. In 5 years, it's going to be 10 million items. So artificial intelligence, where is it going to come in? Because we're going to go from not smart assistants, but intelligent assistants. Almost like having, somebody that's compassionate. And I talk about compassion AI, that cares about you like your mother. At the same time, to be able to help guide you through your life, because there's going to be so much data coming out everywhere. Health, right? Living to 150, all this, that it's just incredible. So having it as part of the blockchain, looking at massive amounts of data sets, being able to make the right kind of decisions at the right time, at the right place, is going to be critically important. This is really part of what you're doing, is really streamlining our lives, the optimization of our lives, using intelligence behind it. That's where it's going to become beautiful. So, it's we talk about it every day. We write about it almost every day, but it's right.
It is, and even like in the capital markets, AI, and even what we're looking at AI is basically kind of to really, one, to capture bad actors, on the platform, right? Being able to attract and capture bad actors, and the second is to really improve the kind of the matchmaking between the investors and the entrepreneurs, and be able to kind of provide that predictive capability, right? Mm-hmm. Where once we have enough data, we can actually help determine what are the trends within certain categories of the market, mm-hmm. right? And that can actually help hopefully reduce volatility rather than increase it, because, I don't know if you've seen or heard about lumber prices.
Oh,
in the past, right? Right. So it's like lumber prices have jumped up like 600%.
Yeah. It's
right?
Amazing. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we're now technically we could tokenize lumber, we could tokenize forest, but with the data we can actually anticipate these changes in demand and supply much more accurately than is done now by traders on the floor, mm-hmm. essentially.
No, I agree. That's why we talk about transparency in the supply chain. It's exactly
that's exactly it.
All the way to the toilet paper in the store. So it's incredible. It's incredible world. You're doing a great job. Over 22 years of experience in the capital markets. I mean, it's amazing. And I really appreciate you joining my show today, Suhail. And it's phenomenal. And I love Calgary. It's a great.
Thank you.
Though I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yes. Well, we got to meet up at the Stampede one of these years. That would be fun.
Scotland.
And great. No, thank you so much, Gary, for inviting me, and a pleasure speaking with you.
Sure. So, and closing thoughts, and what do you see happening over the next 6 months? And what do you wish to say to my audience?
Well, first of all, I wish to say thank you for listening to us and being here. Over the next 6 months, in the short term, I think the capital markets are kind of a voting machine. And in the long term, they're a weighing machine. and I've stolen that from Warren Buffett.
Mhm.
And so in the short term, just I think be cautious. I think the markets are exuberant, particularly in digital assets and in alternative markets. But just educate yourself. The best investment you can make is actually understanding and the capital markets. And you don't have to be like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand rockets, right? And this is
Mhm.
what I like to tell people. But know your basics,
Mhm.
and then know the tools, and hopefully we can help investors do a lot better and help companies save a lot of money.
No, I agree. And if it's a rocket, make sure you're not in the flame.
Exactly.
Like, so how do people get a hold of you? We have a lot of
Yes.
and startups. How do they get a hold of you so they can?
Sure. And so the best way to get a hold of me by email, sa@aldac.com. I'm on Twitter at Suhail Ahmad and on LinkedIn. Just search me or search Aldac and look forward to connecting.
So, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you again. And to my
Thank
audience,
you.
thank you for joining GSD Presents one more time. Stay tuned for another GSD Presents on Thursday this week. Appreciate it. See you soon. Stay
Great. Thank
safe,
you.
healthy, and be optimistic. Take care. Talk to you soon.